Hello, my name is Ben Hainstack. I will be discussing the productive and counterproductive behaviors in the workplace assignment. This is for Psychology 516, Industrial Organizational Psychology at Liberty University. So the first question talks about how recent historical events have affected the course of both research and practice in the organizational psychology field. So a few examples I came up with. The one that probably stands out the most is the pandemic, because this changed a lot of how people perform their normal work routines. So the pandemic, because of its protective measures and distancing people from the risk of exposure and things like that brought on from the workplace, a lot of them were forced to work from home, remote work, things like that. So they weren't physically going into a workplace. So with that, it changed a lot of how the research and practices were done with organizational psychology. So one of the main things that changed with that was how people performed and how productive they were with working at home. So because there was such a large amount of people working from home, this forced researchers to look into how this affected their productivity within the workplace. So researchers began looking into and performing multiple studies to determine how effective working from home was, because it was thought of as being less productive if you were working from home, and that there'd be more distractions outside the office or physical workplace. So what they began finding when looking into this research was that it allowed for a better work-life balance for the people who were forced to work at home. Now it was a test for some people, because not every personality type would have benefited from this, and nor would the workplace. So it depended on what type of person and the type of duties that they were doing would determine how productive they were working from home. And this forced the researchers to look into the types of people that would benefit from that more. The practices that this led into would be more so policy changes for certain organizations to allow this type of work for people, because it did show some improvement for a better work-life balance for those people. But it was all dependent on the type of people and the type of conflict that they had working at home versus the workplace. One of the other examples that I found quite interesting as far as how this affected the work from home portion of these of this question for related to historical events. Now looking into this, I found a lot of evidence that pointed into our presidential elections being a major influencer with how people responded to the workplace, given the results of the elections, whether positively or negatively. So what researchers and practitioners begin looking into is to see what could be done as far as bettering the employee well-being at the workplace, given the results of elections, especially with the ones that we've had in the past decade, because those have had a major influence on how people have responded. So practices that were put in place were some conflict resolution and mediation policies in the workplace that would allow people to cope and resolve conflict, because more than likely they would be in an area where they or environment that would potentially be putting them in a place of conflict if they were working with somebody who had opposing viewpoints. And these practices were put in place to try and mitigate that conflict. Other things that were looked into as far as the research and practice go, employee support. Practitioners realize that they should look into providing ways of additional support for people who would be dealing with stress or anxiety from the results of those elections. We see this a lot in business policies now, at least I have, where because of the results of certain elections, you see a lot of advertising or promotions talking about inclusive environments, and a lot of employers have emphasized facilitating discussions within political issues and how they would emphasize the respect and understanding to help people build that inclusive environment and work with others. For the next question, this one covers recruiting and how to generate a large applicant pool, a highly diverse applicant pool in this position. So for this, I'd be taking the position of an advisor, and when discussing with the recruitment director from a local university, the objective is to create a highly diverse applicant pool for the faculty. For this one, to generate a large applicant pool, my advice would be to look into advertising online, using recruiting websites, social media, anything on the internet that job postings could be posted and used for generating applicants. The problem with this is it tends to generate a too large of a applicant pool, and then that makes it more labor intensive to try and narrow it back down. So you could use certain job boards to advertise, and with that you can include different work descriptions and different requirements that could help filter out the applicants who would normally be applying that aren't actually qualified, because you don't want to spend the time to review each case or each applicant to determine if they were a good fit for your organization. Another reason why using the internet and job boards online is because it can help advertise the company's culture and how they are portrayed to the applicants. So that's beneficial because the applicants are able to place themselves into that environment and envision themselves into a culture, and hopefully that would result in them becoming socialized within that organization. So part of creating a large pool is to attract the right applicants. So using the internet and online resources for job postings, younger generations have a tendency to prefer those types of methods opposed to a older or near retirement age work group. So these methods of using electronic communications would attract a younger, potentially more innovative crowd to hopefully create that diversity within that organization. Certain activities and events that could be used to generate that large pool. I see this a lot, even in my local area, are just simply job fairs. Advertise online that a job fair um, being offered at a certain time, depending on location. You can offer. You could do it on a university campus if you are looking to generate a large pool of younger, maybe less experienced, maybe entry level positions on campus. You would likely attract a large pool from there. You could go to other areas in a community to attract, depending on your location, how you would determine which applicants you would want, and based on their experience for that position that you're hiring for. So for the third question, this one covers how you would keep and or retain a high performing employee, how to keep them happy in their position, because it costs a lot and it's not very effective way of hiring and keeping employees if they quickly become dissatisfied and unhappy with their work, and they soon leave, and the cycle has to repeat all over again. So one of the recommendations I would have to keep people happy would be to discuss what their needs are outside of the workplace, or if offer them the opportunity to discuss what their needs are. So this could open up the door to a way to reduce the work family conflict. If they have family obligations and they had certain times or events that they had to be to outside of work, offering up a more flexible schedule to allow them to attend those events would reduce that conflict with their family. A lot of that conflict results in unsatisfied or disgruntled employees, because they feel like their work is infiltrating their family, and that can be that kind of very negative effect on how people respond in the workplace. Other ways that could help retain certain high performing employees would be to offer more flexible schedules. Variable shifts is one, remote work from home, offering those opportunities for them to allow them to work flexibly their family schedule, and their work. Some businesses have even gone as far to offer a more, opposed to just working a certain amount of hours, a certain amount of projects or tasks to complete in a day. So it wouldn't necessarily matter how much they're working, but if they had a certain amount of objectives to complete in a day, they could complete those as they see fit throughout their day, as they attend to certain family events, and reducing that conflict there. So depending on the business and the position, that could be an opportunity offered there to allow even more flexibility for that individual to really cut back on that conflict that they could potentially be experiencing. If the objective is to keep a high performing employee, we want to keep them high performing, and they could likely succeed in a more performance based role where they're just completing objectives or tasks throughout the day rather than just clocking in, completing 8 hours of work, and then clocking back out. it could see an increase in productivity if they were to be assigned a role such as that. So for the fourth question, this one will cover job descriptions and how the OCBs relate to, or how those would improve the performance of the individual based on which elements are included within that job description. So for this one, I'm going to cover my job description. So my current position is considered it's within facilities management and healthcare environment. So for this one, when reviewing my job description, I see a lot of broad requirements and very gray areas that don't really get involved or discuss in great detail what the requirements actually are. So for my job description, I felt that it had certain responsibilities, such as work as a member of the facilities team. That seems pretty broad and doesn't really give a clear description as to what that actually means or what they would be doing. I feel the more descriptive and detailed the responsibilities are would allow the individual a better opportunity to envision themselves performing that work. I feel like it wouldn't be very productive to have very vague definitions of the responsibilities for that position within the job description, because you wouldn't want a person to go through the hiring process and come on board and then be blindsided with job duties that they weren't expecting. So I think the more descriptive and more detailed that those responsibilities are within the job description, the better it would be for that employee coming on board. One of the sections in the chapters in the book discusses how job experience is a predictor of a job performance. So using the job description of this position, you could use definitive descriptions of that role. So when discussing this with the employee, if they have that job experience, they would understand what exactly that role is asking of, or what they're looking to hire you for. So with that, if a person was coming on board that had a lot of job experience and they were looking at the job description and saw the responsibilities of that role on there and it fit well with what their job description is, that could be an indicator of a high-performing employee, would be improved job performance for that role. So for my job description, I would include more descriptive responsibilities and I would remove the vague work elements that don't really cover how that certain individual would be expected to perform within that role. Now for this final question, this one discusses how working as a consultant with a large organization, they're experiencing increase in counterproductive work behavior, or CWBs. And the goal is to conduct an audit on the company and to determine how these behaviors are occurring. So these behaviors are mostly centered around working fewer hours and becoming more counterproductive. So without specific data to determine what exactly the cause is, a few areas of suspicion that I would recommend in this position would be to look into the personality traits of each employee. So as discussed within the chapter, certain person-based causes of counterproductive work behaviors. So one of the first ones is the conscientiousness. So if a person has high conscientiousness, that they can it results in a more positive form of work productivity. So this a person that is high in this is considered to have a lot of organization and planning, and that has a direct correlation to high performance and increased productivity. If a person is lacking that, then this could ultimately affect their productivity, and personalities with that type of behavior. They often have they don't seem to care too much about their work. They're not fearful of consequences and how that would result or affect them outside of their workplace. So another aspect that I would look into for this situation would be going from looking into the personalities of the group that fall under the person-based causes of CWBs, and then looking into the situation-based causes of CWBs. So this would present an opportunity to the employer to look into how that group is being monitored. So groups with a high level of monitoring and are not really offered the opportunity to become less productive or goof off or waste time. So for this position, I would be looking into to see how much freedom the group is given as far as what their daily job duties are. So if there's a great deal of discretion given to these workers, they could become less engaged and underperformers without even knowing it. So if a group is engaged in this, because the people have a tendency to kind of conform to what is the new norm within the group. So if one person begins displaying this type of behavior, and it could be portrayed and looked at as normal with the other group members. So as that begins to become the new norm as far as discretion goes, other employees will follow that trend, and ultimately it will result in a lack of productivity. So without pulling hard data to find out what the policies of the organization are, those would be the two areas I would look into as far as reasons why the time is being wasted and counterproductive work behaviors are being more evident. Then I believe it would be falling under a personality trait, person-based cause, as well as a situation that would affect the group as a whole. And with that, I have reached the conclusion of this assignment. Thank you.